Hi, everyone. It's so good to see all your faces. Um, my name is Lauren, so I'm going to be one of your hosts for this call. And I have to just say that the hosts were kind of sitting together in the waiting room and reflecting on that this is by far the largest group of people that we've ever had on one of these calls. So I think it's the power of offering something specifically to think about infants and toddlers. So basically how this is going to work is that I'm going to introduce myself, and my sort of colleagues and colleague hosts are also going to introduce themselves. And then I'm just going to kind of like go over some of the Zoom features and how we're going to sort of use Zoom during this call. And then we have some of our faculty that are going to share some kind of stories about work that's happened at Boulder Journey School with infants and toddlers. And then we have our wonderful and treasured colleague, Lisa Matter, here. And she's going to tell you a little bit more about what she does, and she's going to share some kind of big picture framing perspectives. So yeah, after we share the stories, and we will have some time to chat. And since we have such a large group that keeps growing, which is awesome, we're going to break it into have some dialogue, and then we'll kind of come back together at the end. So first, we're going to introduce ourselves. My name is Lauren, and I have been at Boulder Journey School since 2004. I started as a teacher with infants and toddlers, so I worked with kind of, the 0 to 3 ages, and then have been an instructor for the Boulder Journey School Teacher Education Program for the past several years too. So now I work more actively with supporting teachers who are doing their teacher education through our program. So Alex, I'll let you introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Alex Morgan. I'm the Community Outreach Specialist at Boulder Journey School, and I was a classroom teacher for a number of years before moving into a role where I adults, and remembering that when we are active learners ourselves, we are more effective educators. And so that is what puts me here with you all tonight.
So Alex and I are kind of going to act as your facilitators. And then we have invited some other voices to kind of join in the conversation as thinkers as well. So I first want to introduce Lisa, and Lisa and I actually started our journey together at Boulder Journey, our journey at Boulder Journey School together. In 2004, we were co-teachers in the same classroom of toddlers. And so Lisa, I'll let you introduce a little bit about your background and kind of what you do currently.
Yes, thank you, Lauren. Yes, I'm glad you know the year as well. I spent the majority of my career teaching infants and toddlers, but for the last 10 years have been teaching adults to teach infants and toddlers, primarily through the Expanding Quality in Infant and Toddler Care Initiative, which is a professional development initiative in Colorado that focuses on trusting the strengths of caregivers and trusting the strengths of infants and toddlers. When those two things come together, amazing responsive relationships can happen. And it's only become more clear to us in the last several weeks how critical and irreplaceable and no substitute there is for those relationships, and that they can happen in a lot of different ways in a lot of places as we're all learning. So I look forward to, I'm thrilled to see so many people here who care about infants and toddlers, and totally not surprised.
Awesome. Farah, do you want to introduce yourself next?
Hi, I'm Farah, and I've been at Boulder Journey School since 1998. I was a classroom teacher for 16 years with infants and toddlers, and now I'm a part of the director team. This is my 6th year doing that. So yeah, that's me.
And Claire, I want to introduce Claire because Claire is part of our teacher education program here. So we invited her to be part of this call, but she actually works at a different school. So Claire, I'll let you say a little bit about Patchwork School and what you do there.
Okay, hi everyone. My name is Claire Bruno, and I work at the Patchwork School. We're a really, really tiny school in Louisville, Colorado, on the main street, and kind of our biggest focuses were play-based, of course, Reggio Emilia inspired, but our biggest thing that we strive for is just social emotional education and validation of feelings and stuff. So yeah, I'm a toddler teacher there. And yeah, what I'm studying right now for my TEP program is communication with toddlers and specifically technology. And it's kind of funny because this research and process started before the pandemic and all the stay at home and all of our Zoom communication. So I like to think that maybe some toddlers in my classroom are a little more prepared for our virtual realities.
Awesome, thank you. Charlotte, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Charlotte. I work at Boulder Journey School. I'm a senior. Oh wait, can you hear me? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Oh, I'm a senior mentor in the infant room. This is my 20th year there, and the past 3 years I've been teaching infants. So it's about me.
Awesome, thank you. And I just wanted to ask also if anybody, so this is such a big call, if everyone would just mute themselves until we sort of get through the introduction pieces, that would be great so we don't get feedback. Maureen, would you introduce yourself?
Hi everybody, I'm Maureen. I work at Boulder Journey School with the infant children. I've worked there for 7 years, and for the past 2 years I've also taught the infant toddler course at the University of Colorado, Denver.
Awesome, thank you. And Bree, would you introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Bree. I've worked at Boulder Journey School for the past 3 years and did the teacher ed program 2 years ago. And this is my first year working with infants, but I've worked with infants and toddlers for the past 3 years.
Awesome, thank you. I can't actually see like everybody. There's so many people on this call. Are there any other Boulder Journey School teachers that are with us that want to introduce themselves right now? Okay. Okay. So just in terms of welcoming you, I wanted to kind of frame with a couple of big things. One, we in no way at Boulder Journey School see ourselves as experts in the area of virtual communication or how to be infant and toddler educators during a pandemic. So that's important. None of us are. We're just kind of figuring all of this out. But you know, when this all started to happen, one of the things that we started to see happen on social media and, you know, through lots of different channels is just amazing and quick energy between educators trying to connect and sort of share ideas and have dialogues. And, you know, it was so beautiful to see, like, you know, obviously there's a lot of feelings associated with what we're going through. There's, you know, sadness and anxiety and all of these things. But what we saw so quickly was this sort of hopeful and proactive energy, which of course that's what we're seeing because early childhood educators are amazing. But at Boulder Journey School, we sort of, you know, quickly lost the ability to do any kind of in-person professional development. And so we decided to kind of put some energy into this because the one thing we do have is, you know, a large community and a platform to sort of be connectors and conveners. And so we're so happy that you all are with us. We look forward to kind of hearing all of the different perspectives that you have to share. And so please just know that, you know, this is a space for all of us. And so we really look forward to kind of utilizing that. And we also want to recognize sort of the divergent nature of where people are at right now. You know, some of you might be actually working in care settings with children right now. Some of you might be working from home and trying to, you know, be educators with babies from afar. Some of you might not be working right now. at Boulder Journey School, we are currently closed, and we are all working from home, trying to, support children and families from afar, and, starting to talk about what it might look like when we reopen. None of us knows exactly when that is. None of us knows exactly what that's going to look like, but we're, starting to think. But, we just want to sort of put it out there that we recognize that things are changing so quickly, and there's, lots of differences, obviously, based on where you are geographically and where you are, in terms of thinking and style of education and setting. But we do think that there's these really wonderful things that we all have in common, which is passion for doing the work that we do and passion for caring for human beings. And we think that this is why this is so important to kind of bring us all together. So yeah, we really look forward to it. I want to share a little bit about kind of how we're going to use Zoom during this call. I want to point out a couple of the features. Probably a lot of you are like really used to Zoom by now, and maybe some of you haven't used it as much. So if you go up to the top of your screen, you'll see speaker view and gallery view. We recommend gallery view because it just gives you more faces to see during a conversation. If you go down to the bottom of your screen, to the left is your microphone. So we do recommend that you keep yourself muted, especially when we're in this sort of big group. Keep yourself muted, and then use the unmute as an action to indicate that you want to say something. It's kind of like your lean in if we were in person. And we found that to be kind of a good strategy for kind of managing different voices on such a big call. You also have the next little icon over is your video feature. Feel free to keep your video on or keep it off. We like to see your faces, but we totally understand why people keep their video off sometimes. And we also want to say, if you realize that something is about to start happening in your background, or if you need to get up and move locations at any point, it's helpful to turn your video off, because also if there's a bunch of action or motion in your screen, it can mess with the microphone and it can accidentally mute people out and things like that. Something we've learned. So if you go over to your participants icon, which is the fourth one over from the left, and click on that, it'll give you a list of all of the people who are in this call, which is an amazingly long list, which is awesome. And if you go down to the bottom, kind of in the middle of that like white bar that comes up when you push that, there's a raise hand button. So when we're in sort of the big group too, and you can use this in your smaller breakout rooms as well, you can actually formally like use that, and a little blue hand comes up at the top corner of your screen, and so you can use that to indicate that you're waiting to speak as well, that you have something you want to contribute. So we just want to make sure people see that. And then the next feature I'm going to point out is chat. So if everyone, we recommend opening your chat. So just click on that chat button, and then that brings up a chat also on the right of your screen. And we found the chat feature to be really nice in these calls that we've been doing. Kind of, you can use it as a means of participation. So you can, type comments and questions and reflections into the chat. And it also can be just a really good tool, like collectively taking notes. So if somebody says something or that you want to, reflect on later, or if someone says something that prompts a resource that you know about that you want to share with everybody, we recommend that you type it into chat and kind of use that feature as we go, because when this call is over, we can download that entire transcript and then share it with everybody. So it kind of becomes this like collective note-taking thing that everyone can participate in and contribute to. So those are kind of the Zoom tools that I wanted to share. And so the way we're going to start is some of the people who introduced themselves are going to share some specific perspectives and stories, just to kind of give us a place to jump off from and a place to kind of start our thinking together. And then when those people have shared, then we'll go into the sort of open-ended discussion piece. So I am going to turn it over to Lisa, who is going to share some kind of big picture frameworks that she wanted to offer to all of you.
I'm just going to take a deep breath to start that off, because I think that the work of infant and toddler care is so visceral. Um, it's so close to the heart, which is, I think, why there are, I'm going to roll over the bottom here, now 160 people here to share in these stories together. What I've been touched by and thought about for the last several weeks as we've been in this remarkable time is that both infant and toddler teachers and infants and toddlers are the exact right leaders for this moment that we're in. Both of these groups of people are unique to every other kind of leader, every other kind of learner, because they're willing to stay in that physical space. We have to do physical work. We change diapers. We have to be ready when someone throws up on us. We have to also, we're very interested in the tiny details, and these kinds of things lend themselves to being able to pivot when we have to change the way we do our physical work together. So I look to babies to be our leaders because their whole role in the world is to like and adapt to it. And you are all here, and I'm seeing some people nod their heads. Yeah, that's actually something that I like about babies. It's that they come to school, they come to my care setting, they come to my family childcare home. I come to them in their setting, and they say, today we're going to, and then we adapt. We all have that experience of, I thought everything was settled in my classroom, and then the babies learn to roll over, and now they have to practice rolling over in their sleep, and they can't sleep, and they can't sleep at night, and their parents are exhausted, and we get through it because it's what babies do. They jump into new spaces and new skills and new abilities, and then we follow them, which is again why I think I'm grateful to be here to listen to all of you and hear what comes up for you as you think about caring for infants and toddlers in these times, because you are the best leaders in all of the education. You already knew care and education don't translate the way we think we could imagine they might over Zoom, because infant and toddler care is responsive in the moment. You're used to making plans and then adapting and shifting in the moment, and sometimes 5 times in the moment, and having many different needs. And I know that because I'm trying to teach 1st and 3rd grade in my house in the middle of the day. And the skills that I'm drawing on to do that are my toddler teaching skills. Okay, let me check how everyone's feelings are feeling. Does anybody need us to respond to and name their feelings? Now we can look at what is it that you're learning from this? How can we move on together? And I don't remember which world leader this was. It was Churchill, it was Eisenhower, who said, planning is essential and plans are useless. And again, I just think infant and toddler teachers are fantastic at this. Thinking up, what are all the possible plans? What are all the possibilities that babies are going to bring to us in this moment? And how can we pivot with those? And then I think that families need you. And so I'm hopeful that by your being here today to just connect with other teachers and educators who get the work that you do, you then are able to give back to the families, whether they're families that you are still seeing in person, whether they are families that you're working on ways to remain connected with, because if you're not the person doing that care, you are still wrapped around that family and they still need you. So thank you for having me. And I will be excited to answer questions and see where the rest of the conversation goes.
Thanks, Lisa. Okay, so I'm going to invite Alex and Farah are going to share some kind of framing thoughts and stories from the work that's been being developed at Boulder Journey School over the last few weeks. So I'll invite you to jump in now.
Thanks, Lauren. And Lisa, thank you so much for that reminder that with these changes, who we are as educators doesn't need to stop and shouldn't stop. And above all, I think that those are the strengths that are needed so much at this time. I want to just offer a little bit of framework about some of the thinking that Boulder Journey School has been engaged in over the past few years, really around the possibilities for digital spaces. We have been calling it digital humanity because technology has had, these past 3 weeks have changed everything, but has had such a sort of fearful and negative connotation, especially in early childhood, especially with infants and toddlers. And we, we think a lot about Ellen Hall, who was our founding executive director. We were talking, and she said, if we consider that everything around us is part of who we are, everything around us is us, we have to remember that the digital is also part of us. And that resonated so strongly because digital spaces were created by humans. And if we remember that a human drive is to connect and is to create together and to collaborate, then we can think about these digital spaces and uses of technology as a tool to connect and to create and to collaborate. And so that's a space that, Claire, sort of like you were saying earlier, had been something that we had the privilege to play with. And then, life changed drastically, and it's no longer been something that that we can play with. It's now become this new way of life and of survival for many of us in terms of connection. And so now we're thinking about how do we make the most of our spaces, of our digital spaces and our digital connections. And so I want to ask Farah if you wouldn't mind sharing a little bit about some of the strategies that have been played with. And just a disclaimer before you start, Farah, as Lauren said, that we have exactly as much experience as anybody else. So 3 weeks, these are strategies that we're playing with, not answers.
Thank you for saying that, Alex. And thank you all for having me here. We have been playing around with how we can stay connected to each other and to continue to collaborate. And so we sort of came up with a framework that we are playing with right now. And I'm seeing some really beautiful things happening within the school community. So each classroom sort of has, a folder in this system, and then we're asking others to sort of collaborate with them to read what their work is about, or to see what their work is about, their work which was sort of happening right before we left, and then how is it starting to be able to pick some of those threads back up. So then other teachers are getting into those and sort of offering their ideas about how connections can continue to be made. And so it's really like a huge faculty meeting, but it's a document that people can add to, and so it continues to grow and change. And I think it's really was necessary for us to connect in this way, but I really think it's something that we'll continue to do, because it's just such an easy way for teachers to lend ideas to each other and to really collaborate, even though they're not in the same space.
So I want to share just a couple of stories that have come from what we've affectionately been calling the digital piazza. And I'm going to share my screen, and then Farah, I'll share these stories, and then Farah, if you'll share a little bit of sort of the behind the scenes thinking and a little bit of the significance. And I just want to say, I got some feedback last week that when sharing my screen, that sometimes the picture places it over the words. So I did try to design these slides this time to be more Zoom friendly, but I can't see what you're seeing. So if you end up having some things blocking the words, you can actually adjust the videos of people over it so that those will not be sitting on top of the words. So we've been thinking about a few different areas of how we support families. One is thinking about facilitating families in facilitating play. And one of our infant classes shared videos of the infants playing when they were at school, and then offered some strategies for families to unpack the play that they were seeing, recognizing that families often don't have really the privilege that we have to spend so much time with their children to understand what their children are doing, what these minute actions can be telling them. And so spending a little bit of time really unpacking these glimpses of their children at school. One strategy that they have used to facilitate this is to go to a resource of videotives, which is a whole collection of videos, and share those with families so that they can go through and gather multiple different aspects of the children engaging, and then unpack. Videotives offers some unpacking, but then the teachers also can unpack those with the families. We've also been thinking about how do we guide at-home experiences. One of the infant classes, again, had been looking at sound before we went into physical distancing, and thinking about the relationship that infants have with sounds. And so they offered some of that documentation to families, and then also looking at some questions for families to be thinking about when watching their infants play. And that has then grown through to thinking about inviting families to create an inventory of familiar sounds. Some of the teachers have shared some of the sounds that they hear when they are at home, and the sounds that they're enjoying when they're at home, and the sounds that are bringing different emotions, and have invited the families then to send in just small clips of the daily sounds.
And this is something that I actually really saw unfolding within sort of the digital piazza space. And so, the infant teacher sort of introduced this idea of sound. And then from there, they got so much feedback from other teachers around, oh, well, my class could go on a sound walk and then we could send it to you guys. Or, other teachers sort of experiencing life and realizing like sort of what gives them comfort, like water. Maybe water sounds could be really great. And then that has me thinking about sort of the waves in the infant room, and how that it is kind of calming and they are used to the sounds of water. And so that's how I've gotten to see sort of all of those ideas come together, and then the teachers moving forward and inviting the families to help them to create this sort of inventory of sounds.
We've also been thinking about co-facilitating experiences virtually. So one of our toddler classes has been playing really from the first week with the balance between sharing things for families to do on their own at home, coming together in a big group for Zoom, and coming together in small groups, because there's value in sharing time as a whole class and sharing time in small groups. And so they have been hosting one large group Zoom per week, and they realized very quickly that the best strategy for the large group Zoom is to have it be a movement based. So they've been doing various yogas. They did costume yoga. And what I found incredibly striking about this exchange, this was on one of their family Facebook groups, is that they were 10 minutes away from their yoga, and one parent wrote and said, my child is having a hard time. Superman's having a less than super day. And the teachers responded, that's fine. We'll see you another day. Just let him know that we love him. And I think that that's really important, because we've heard feedback from families as well as from teachers about finding this balance between offering experiences and expecting families to participate. And every family is in such a different space in their lives. And, it can be stressful to think, oh my gosh, this is the day that I'm having at home right now, and I have to make it to a Zoom yoga in 5 minutes. And the teachers were really conscious to make sure that the families knew that that was okay. They also, this is from the same class in their small group experiences, and they have been asking families to come together around a concept. So prior to moving to stay at home, this class had been looking at trajectory, and they'd been doing a lot of work in class with pendulums. And so the teacher built a pendulum out of common objects that she had at home, but then instead of saying everybody build this and come together, she said come together with something that spins. And one child brought a top, and one child used the swings in their backyard, and one child spun her body on the floor. And again, this was an invitation to come together around a common concept where every family has the opportunity to bring that concept to it. And then some of the children did and build pendulums at home following that, but it was not, okay, we're all going to do something, which again could be asking families to add one more thing to their plate. Fair, I don't know if you have anything to add on that.
Yeah, no, this has been a really interesting experience with this class, especially because they've tried so many different styles of connecting with families. So they've done the large group and the small group. They also reach out individually to children. They have a rotation going. So they have all these different ways in terms of what does work for families, because it really is so different. But if what really works is an individual call, 10 minutes of reading stories, that also is something that the teachers are doing. But yeah, this class has tried so many different things, and they've also gotten quite a bit back from parents in terms of what's working for them. So that's also been really helpful.
This same class has also done a lot of asking for feedback from families. So thinking about various surveys, and in a more recent survey, they did an initial survey to find out when families wanted to have interactions with teachers, what kinds of interactions. In a more recent survey, they also were thinking about, do you all just want some adult connection? Do we want to do a no child connection? And so put that out. And then we also are thinking a lot about how do we support families in this time of uncertainty. And, I we're all in this completely unfamiliar situation, and we are wrestling with something that we've never had to wrestle with before, and our children are feeling that, and families are, you know, I think I've seen this on Facebook so many times and it resonates with me. Families are not like homeschooling by choice. Families are all of a sudden balancing work and all of a sudden going into a career that they maybe didn't necessarily want to go into, of teaching, and making sure that their children are just, you know, making it through the day. And so one class gathered some resources to support their families who were seeing that their children were responding to these uncertain times, and gathered some research for reassuring and validating, and also some tips for thinking about how to support your child when they're unsure. So I really love these verbs that they chose: play, soothe, verbalize. So those are a few stories from our experiences here. And again, not that those are the only things to do. Those are just a couple of the ideas that that we've been working with for supporting infants and toddlers.
Awesome, thank you. And just before we move into the discussion, I also wanted to invite Claire to say a few words about some of the work that she's been doing in her classroom, because I also think it provides a really nice kind of inspiration for all of us to think about, and a way to sort of frame the thinking, because I think so many of us are feeling burdened by being thrust into, there's a lot we're being thrust into, so we should recognize that, and it's okay to feel burdened. But I think that Claire's story is really interesting, so I just wanted to share, to invite Claire to share a couple of your kind of key pieces of learning or reflection from the work that you've been doing.
All right. Hi, everyone. Thanks for being here and showing up. It's a little different to be having a discussion in this kind of way, but as we're all learning, it's all about experimenting with what we have and just trying new things. Right. So I'm a current member of the teacher education program right now, and I actually am a partner. So I work at a school called the Patchwork School in Louisville, Colorado. And for one of my classes for this semester, it's called Contextual Curriculum. And you kind of pick a theme or a thread and follow it throughout the course of the semester. And all the while you're learning, you're reading, you're learning how to co-construct knowledge with the children in your classroom, and also with other teachers and with families and parents. So it's a really great exercise in just getting really into the thick of it, of learning and seeing how deep you can go. So what I had chose in January was I started with communication technology. And it started where a parent, they had just come back from a vacation and they were in a hotel room, and their daughter really enjoyed picking up the phone that's next to the bed, you know, one of those old school landline phones that you can call the front desk with, and holding it up to her ear and saying hello and pretending to have a conversation. And the parent kind of asked me, she was like, how does my child know how to use this phone? Like, she's only ever used an iPhone before, and all of a sudden she just picks it up. And I said, well, yeah, we have phones like that in our classroom. And I guess I never thought that maybe children of this age might not know how to use a landline phone with the buttons and all of those little bits and bobs and doodles. So yeah, and then I thought back to, we have these blocks, they're domino blocks from IKEA, you guys might know of them, and they're like the perfect phone rectangle shape. And I noticed that kids use that as a phone also. It has little dots on it for the dominoes, just kind of like the keypad. So my co-teacher, Becca, and we kind of just started to get into playing with communication and communication technology. And originally, I kind of wanted to understand the children's current knowledge of technology, computers, how to talk to people, Skyping, Zooming, all of those things. So we kind of started playing around with that stuff in our classroom, where we would go to different parts of the school and FaceTime one small group and another small group, or we'd choose to FaceTime a teacher to check in if we could come into their classroom. We even had a student go to Hawaii for 2 weeks, and the children who were at school were asking about him a lot, really missing him. So we sent video messages back and forth with his family, so we knew where he was, and in the end the children knew that he was okay and he was safe and he wasn't staying home because he was sick or hurt or anything like that. He was having fun. So eventually Becca and I kind of connected that the children are wanting to connect with each other, whether it's face-to-face or whether it's virtually or through communication technology. So then everything happened, and now we're really experimenting in the same way that we were in our classroom, what works and what doesn't work with communicating through virtual realms. So we've been asking for a lot of parent feedback, just as Farah and Alex were saying, and it's all spectrum. Some parents who maybe didn't want any screen time with their children before, now they're asking for more. They're asking for more videos for us to send, more virtual FaceTime, more one-on-one type of things. And then there's other families who are saying, we don't have the capacity right now to even think about this. So there's so many different ways that people are dealing with this. And what we found is maybe at first it felt a little disheartening that we weren't getting a whole lot of communication with our families or our students. And then just by reaching out and asking over email, we learned that some people are having a really hard time with this. And I think for Becca and I, when we are doing these experimentations and learning and figuring things out, I realized last week that because I don't have children and because Becca doesn't have children, I'm starting to forget like how a child thinks and what they're needing. So there was something that went out on Facebook last week that people might have seen. It's a social story called We Wear Masks. I can't remember who the authors are right off the top of my head, but I sent that out to families as a resource because I realized once I started thinking about it, when I go outside, I also feel scared when I see people wearing masks. I wonder why. So today, our classroom had a Zoom and only 4 or 5 children showed up with their families, but we read that book virtually together by doing a screen share on Zoom. And then there were older siblings in it, and the older siblings started asking questions like, Claire, why do you feel scared when you see people wearing masks? So just explaining it and getting down to that social emotional, because I think when this pandemic first started, I felt like I needed to be putting out provocations and ideas for what to do at home. And then after a while, I realized just by providing families and children of my classroom opportunities to connect, that's what they're really needing. So yeah, so it's been a fun experiment. It's been a fun journey, and we're still learning every day what to do and how to do it and what people like and what works and what doesn't work. I can just add that one thing that doesn't work on Zoom is singing altogether. That's a very awkward experience with lagging and stuff. So we've just been adapting with all of these things we're learning about. So thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing, Claire. And Charlotte just shared the link for that We Wear Masks book in the chat, so everybody can have access to that. It seems like, yeah, it was like last week, all of a sudden, it seemed like there was some really good resources that started to pop up in terms of what we can be offering children, like resources for children. It took a couple weeks to get out there, but like, it's just amazing like how responsive people are in this situation. Okay, so what we want to do now, so we have 169 participants. I just have to share that like these calls we've been doing over the past like 4 weeks, I think the largest number we've gotten is 40. So this is so cool. So what we're going to do now is we have some discussion questions that we have kind of generated and put together from, you know, we kind of made an effort to crowdsource some of the things that people are thinking about like before this call. And we weren't sure if we were going to sort of stay in a large group to discuss or go into smaller group breakout rooms. But with a group this large, breakout rooms seems like the best strategy. So what we're going to do is I'm going to assign you to a breakout room. So when I do that, you'll get a little message that pops up that says you're invited to breakout room, you know, whatever. And then you just click OK, and it'll sort you into smaller groups. And I'm going to paste into chat right now. This is the kind of the little rundown of you know, kind of the structure that we're offering. So take 10 minutes to first introduce yourselves, talk about where you're working, what your current role is, and you can share if there's a specific question that you really want to discuss in this setting. And then I'll also paste in the discussion questions that we kind of came up with, that we generated from all of the feedback that we've gotten. So then you'll have a solid like 30 minutes within those groups to talk about what's relevant to you, share ideas, share resources, and then we'll all come back together as a large group at about 5:30. And so think about, as you're talking in your smaller groups, if there are sort of key reflections or key pieces of learning that you want to kind of share back with the big group, because when we come back to the big group, then we'll invite anybody to sort of share out if there's, you know, reflections or questions or things that they're still thinking about or things that their group came up with that could be useful to other people. So yeah, that's what we're going to do. And then we'll kind of do some reflections at the end. So let's see. I am going to, oops. Okay, so it looks like we have, wait a second. Sorry, I'm just gonna sort everybody into a breakout room right now, but I need to make the setting work. Okay, so I'm gonna sort you automatically into, Alex, do you have a good sense of how many groups I'm doing?
If you're doing 6 per, it'll be 24.
Ooh, that's a lot. All right.
Although dropping. Friends, breakout groups are fun.
They are, actually. We've gotten this feedback on previous calls that people were nervous about breakout rooms, and then once they were in them, then they were like, it was best. It was great. Okay, so I'm going to assign you to a group right now. I'll also keep an eye on kind of who's in and out of the different breakout rooms. And so if your group number drops down, we'll try to add somebody into it. So everyone, have lovely discussions, and we'll see you back in about 40 minutes. All right, it seems like we have everybody back. So welcome back, everyone. I first just have to apologize and acknowledge that We speculate that Zoom changed some of their settings since we used some of these Zoom features last week, which we know they're continually doing because of security concerns. But so when I was posting things in chat, they were not posting to all of you, so I wasn't able to get you all of the discussion questions because we were kind of trying to troubleshoot that. But it sounds like everyone was having pretty good discussions. I'm sure you all had plenty of, thoughts and things to bring to the group. So I apologize for the weirdness. And if anyone's planning on joining us tomorrow, we're going to try to troubleshoot that even further and work through kind of why some of that weirdness happened. But so we have a little bit of time, and I wanted to just kind of open it up and invite anyone who has a great reflection or something that your group kind of came up with, or something that somebody else said that you wanted to share. Just invite people to kind of share openly. So you can do that by just unmuting yourself as you sort of lean in. Or you can use the little hand raise feature too, and we'll try to scroll through the pages and look for those. So anyone can jump in now and share your thinking.
Something that came up for us in the breakout rooms, the majority of us in the breakout room were working at a lab school. So for us came the question, when we think about how we're supporting children and families and ourselves, also thinking about how are we supporting our students during this time. So that was really something that we were able to discuss and kind of relate to one another with, and sharing strategies and ideas. So that was kind of one of the things that I appreciated about.
Yeah, we did that on purpose. No, I'm just kidding, we didn't. That's so funny that happened, that you're all kind of like ended up in that same room.
That's funny because I did as well. I ended up with my co-teacher and one of our floaters that spends most of the time in our class anyway, which was really nice. So we were able to collaborate, and it was good discussion with the other teachers as well. It was really nice. This was my first time doing this, breaking up like that, and it was very helpful.
Oh, good. That's awesome.
That was really nice. I like that.
Good. What other kinds of things did folks talk about that you can share with the large group, or just, anything that you're kind of still thinking about?
I guess I'll share. We were talking a little bit at the end about the blurry line of our personal life and our professional life, and how our professional life is now out of our house. So how we're trying to, when you ask that question about taking care of ourselves, when all of our work is right there, and that line of, we not letting parents have our cell phones, and then now it's a little bit trickier in some ways. And do you give your cell phone? Do you not give your cell phone? And that was our conversation, which I'm sure many of us struggle with that. It made me think a lot about these boundaries that we create, and is there a time where your flexibility on those boundaries has to stretch, and how far does it stretch before it's too far?
That is such an important thing to talk about.
I agree with that, because you're mixing when you leave home, you're leaving home to go into your professional life. And then being in this situation, you're kind of like, it's a happy medium. You're in your home life, living your personal life, and then it's your professional life in between, in the mix of things. So yeah, it is a little bit hard to accommodate sometimes the parent, but you have to find your happy medium with the parent. And at that point, when you're exchanging phone numbers and cell numbers and emails and the FaceTiming, the Zooming, you do have to kind of set your boundaries. But I think they kind of set themselves, because they're parents as well that are overwhelmed with being at home working and being with their children, and that have had parents text before wanting to FaceTime, do you have 5 minutes, so and so wants to see you, and so forth. And we do that. We'll make a plan. As long as they're, you know, giving you a heads up and you have that time at the time, then you make that happen. And then, you know, of course you set your weekly, you know, appointments or whatever with the children or the parents and so forth. But yeah, you have to try to find your happy medium. That sometimes is hard to do with your personal life as well, especially if you're a parent, and making sure your children work at 12 o'clock lunch or 11 o'clock lunch, you know, zooming time with your class, which is your professional life, works with your child's life that you're trying to help with their classwork as well. So you have to find where that works for you or anyone, or your co-teacher as well.
Such good points. Has anyone had come up with examples of like ways that they've made that balance work, or just little anecdotes? Like, I just curious.
I definitely made a joke about how, like, during the day I might feel guilty about doing something that's not completely and entirely work related. So if my dishwasher needs to be emptied, or my floor needs to be swept, or I need to make myself lunch, so I might say something like, well, it's time to clean the office, and like I'm getting up and because in the classroom we would care for our space, we would make sure it's tidy, and so why wouldn't we grant ourselves the same kind of care in our own home spaces that we would in our classroom spaces. And then we were also talking a lot about just creating deadlines with families. Some of the people in the breakout room had talked about, you know, setting up an automatic email reply that said, you know, from 8 to 6, I'm available, and I might not get back to you right away, but I will. And if I don't get back to you by 6, then I'll get back to you in the morning, just to kind of set that boundary of my work day is over at this time. But I imagine it's still difficult for families who have young children at home that are school age and who are needing some assistance with remote learning at this time still. And I can't really speak to that, but those are some of the strategies that we have been using.
Yeah, it's interesting. I've actually had a lot of conversations with various people about this boundary setting thing, because just like my role at Boulder Journey School is very odd. It's because I work specifically with all of our partner schools. So, and our partner schools are all over the Denver area. So I primarily work from home. There are times when I go to school, but it's rare. And like, I'm the only person in our organization that does that. So I kind of like went through a lot, like a few years back when I started doing this, where like I would have those, like that guilt of like, you know, I like wanted to like go walk my dog in the middle of the day because I felt like I needed some fresh air, but then I would like feel guilty the whole time that I wasn't like working. But then like when I reframed it as like, I mean, you know, we talk about caring for ourselves in the classroom, but also like, you know, caring for our spaces, but also just like walking out in the hallway and like saying hi to like other people, or like taking your dishes down to the kitchen, and you might stay in there while you're waiting for the dishwasher or the laundry machine for 10 minutes and like talk to people. Like, we have moments throughout the day that we are sort of disengaged from the work of educating. And I think it's important to like give ourselves that space now too, and sort of recognize that what we can give ourselves is different at home. But I find that like, I at least found that when I relieved myself of that anxiety of like, I have to work all the time, it helped. What other kinds of things were people discussing?
Something our group talked about was being willing to accept and embrace this new normal, if you will, this new format, and find the joy that we can. One of the women in our group said her shower time is sacred to her and is her sanctuary, and the way she treated herself was to buy some really expensive shampoo. And she's the mother of a 3-month-old baby, so showers don't happen daily, but when they do, she really takes the time to slow down and enjoy them. And another woman in our group said spending time with her family and really making the best use of that time. So I think being willing to accept this new normal and find those moments of joy. It's not going to be all day, every day, rainbows and unicorns, but you know, there are bright spots in it every day. We just have to be willing to recognize them and hold on to those rather than focusing on the difficulties.
I was in Beth's group as well in the breakout room, and you know, speaking of the joy, something that really resonated with me and something we discussed in our group was, you know, it was about connections, and something that brings joy that we've noticed in our groups with our children is that those connections bring joy to the children, and it brings those conversations that specifically that we like to hear, and then maybe we can bring wonderful ideas about and try to understand them better and what they're feeling. So definitely connection was a big idea in our group. And I also noticed that it's not only connections that we're having with our families and our children, but connections that we're having with other educators. And that's something that I am so grateful for about the community that we've had. I mean, so many educators from around the world have connected to support one another. And it's just been amazing. And I mean, and going back about those meaningful and intentional connections that we have, even if it's physical or virtually, those connections that are happening make a big deal. So that really, really resonated with me. Just amazing group of educators here, and in that breakout room. Just wanted to share that.
I think that's such an important point, and Lisa just added in the chat that I was thinking about echoing as well. Like at Boulder Journey School, we've started to talk about like what in this situation is going to stick. Like this situation is hard and there's a lot we don't like about it, but what have we started to do that can stick, that can actually make our lives better, that can provide us more connections? And Lisa just added the question, what will you carry forward in this in terms of connections? And I'm just wondering if anyone talked about that as well.
You said something very key. You said connection, right? And that's going to stick.
Yep.
That's it. The only thing that's going to stick is connection. It doesn't matter what kind of activity we want to do with the children, story time, song time. Those are part of the connections. But as long as we're still there to speak to them and listen to them, you know, our time with my coworker and I, my co-teacher and I, and the children and the parents, you know, right now it's a group thing. It might be a small group after, it might be individual after, but you just said something, you just answered your own question. It's just connecting and being consistent with it. That's all it is.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it doesn't matter if your director or your boss or manager, whatever it is, wants you to connect 3, 4, 5 times a day and do this plan and make this plan and where we're going to make things work. At the end of the day, as we just need to connect. Let them see our faces. Let's discuss something, because, you know, and then, you know, support the parent. That's all it is. That's really all it is, because all I want as a teacher is when this time is over and the children come into the classroom, I don't want it to be August, September, like if it's the first day of school. And it might be that. I want them to be able to come in May or June, whenever it is that we're going back, and be like, Miss Milka. I don't want it to be a power struggle of taking the child from the parent because they've been with the parent for so long. As long as you have that connection, and as a teacher, you want to continue to have that connection. Mm-hmm. And out of anything that's going on right now, that's what I want. I want the child those are their children, those are my kids. That's the way I see it. I want my kids to come in the door and be happy to see me in the morning. That's all I want. And to be able to greet them. You know, we think about the goals that we're going to have when we get back to work and be there in the classroom. Those are always going to be there because we are teachers and we are going to go with the flow. Our flow is what's going to be when they come in. Doesn't matter how much you plan ahead. And I plan ahead all the time. I'm an overthinker. I need to plan for everything. But the plan for me is I want them to be happy to see me when they come in the morning. Yes. And be able to greet them. That's it. If I get that morning, that first thing in the morning, that's the connection that we are keeping right now.
Yeah.
And that's it.
That's so beautifully stated. Sylvia, I see you have something you want to add.
I just want to reinforce what Milka is saying right now.
You know how I am, Sylvia.
Yes, we are always thinking about what is going to happen with our plan, with our lesson, how the children are going to come back after all this separation that we already are. But it's not the process, it's the product. At the end, the children are going to learn, or they're going to remember that the best time of their life was being with their parents, or the best time of their life was when they receive a picture from the teachers, they receive a postcard from somebody else. That's what they're going to remember. They are not going to remember our lesson plans, our ABCs, and our books that we read every time. It's just the process that we're going to go through to the end of the product. When we go back to the classrooms, we as teachers know how we're going to follow that part. We know what we're going to do. So children just don't care about that part. This is the thing that we as a teacher, sometimes we stress ourselves, thinking too much ahead of things that I'm sure they're gonna come as soon as we start and walking in our classroom. We already thinking about what is gonna happen when going back to the classroom. We already planning. I have ideas already, because we work in project approach. We were doing such a great project approach before everything started. So now my head is still working on how I can do that part at home with the children to bring it back when they are going to come back and start working from that point. But that's not the main thing. I think right now is this, the connection that we have, that somebody just, as a teacher, we send a post, you know what, I'm sad today. I feel so overwhelmed with everything that we have to do. We have to do webinar, we have to do conference, we have to do this and that. But that other teacher can say, hey, let's relax, let's talk, and we just forget about, for 5 minutes, forget about all this stress. And remember that we are human beings and we need this time for ourselves. We need to find a balance for what we are doing online and what we are doing at home. For our parents, for the children, for ourselves, for our families, own families. But we have to just stop thinking like we have to plan everything.
Yes, we can't do it.
I wanted to
Kathleen.
Hi. Jumping in.
I had something to say. What I mentioned in the group was the one thing that's hard for me is every morning going into my job and greet my students and to give them a hug every morning and tell them how much I love them, and and that's what I miss the most is that connection of missing my kids so much, and my coworkers. I love my coworkers, and just to go in there and just have like that connection with everybody because I love them so much, and that just to go and give them a hug every day, just makes that's
Kathleen, air hugs.
Yes, air hugs.
That's so true. So I want to be conscious of time and acknowledge that we only have a few minutes left. And I want to acknowledge also that it's interesting to me, especially sort of as someone who's been facilitating like lots of these different calls over the last several weeks. And, some of them we just leave very open-ended, and some of them we, have topics like this one. And it's striking to me that obviously we didn't hear from everyone, but the topics that are coming out in this sort of share out has to do with self-care and also acknowledging what we're already good at, which we know that and we're connected with that. But I want to just plug, so the other thing that we're doing this week, if you don't know, on Thursday, we actually organized like a panel of people with various backgrounds in mental health and emotional wellness, and early childhood mental health specialist, like world-renowned sleep expert, like lots of people with these different credentials around mental health and emotional wellness. And so we're doing that as like kind of a panel discussion where we're going to pose questions to those experts who have a variety of backgrounds, and just kind of see what they might have to share about this kind of like mental and emotional health. So I want to plug that because we're really excited about that. And it does seem like over the past few weeks, like we are connected to what we know we're good at and what we know about babies and what we know about young children. And at first we felt very disconnected from that, but it seems like we're coming back to feeling connected to that. But we also have these sadnesses, right, where we can't get hugs from our babies every day. And so I want to just throw that out there as kind of an offering to everyone. So please share with your community. And then I wanted to also give Lisa an opportunity to kind of share if you have any final reflections that you want to kind of leave the group with based on some things that you've heard or talked about.
I would reiterate kind of where you are, Laura, in that core where we recognize I do know what is good. I know what the one thing is, that thread of connection is not only what we need as adults, but what all the humans need. The Fred Rogers Institute would say it's the human interactions that define quality care. That foundation is clear, and from my perspective, it empowers me to work harder to make the conditions around all early care and education such that connection is highlighted. And it's so heartwarming to know that all the educators who are here also said, oh yeah, we get that and we can articulate it. It's very clear to us now what's here and what all this, not that it's not beautiful and nice and valuable, but this piece in the middle isn't going to change.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Awesome. Alex, did you have any final thoughts that you want to share?
Yeah, thank you. I am so struck, by the way that this conversation keeps coming back, and all of these conversations that I've had the ability to participate in. And one of the pieces that came up in the small group that I was in was thinking about what do we do when that connection isn't, when you as a teacher are not feeling that. And I want to, because I really loved this sort of like warmness and togetherness that I just felt from this group over the past 10 minutes. And I also want to acknowledge that we can support each other in those connections that is not always working out as seamlessly as it might, as we might want it to, or as it might be for one person or for another. We've heard a lot from teachers saying that they feel like they're comparing, it's so easy because it's so public and outward facing right now to compare my classroom to your classroom. And just to say, like, a reminder to myself, definitely, and to everyone to be that connection for each other. Because if the families don't have the space to serve and return with you right now, beautiful that that we keep putting this out for families, because they need that. And remember that we need it also. And so what opportunities can we find to comment on somebody's book that they've read, or say, hey, I saw that you put that out and it was really, it really touched me. And just remember that we as a community need each other. And back to that question of what will we take from this when this is all over? I know that I, for one, want to take these connections that I'm making with all of you and find space, and not find space. I want to make space for these connections to continue to happen within the educator community, because I think that we need each other so much. And I, for one, am appreciating that I'm getting from all of you so much. And I'm so grateful that you all have been coming and having these conversations with us.
Here, second that. Well, thank you all so much. Hopefully you got to have some good discussions and you got some, some reinforcement that you're awesome, and, some ideas. So yeah, we hope that this was valuable for you. Keep checking back with us. I know some of your faces I recognize because you've been on like a bunch of these calls we've been doing, but we've been doing one every Wednesday that's really open-ended. So kind of just show up and bring your topics and we'll have a few to throw out. And again, I mentioned we're having that special mental health one on Thursday that should be really great. So thank you all so much for joining and for your contributions, and have a wonderful rest of your week.
Thank you.
Thank you.